You're listening to Walking Through the Word, a space where ancient truth meets modern living. Here, we live and breathe the freedom of the new covenant while deeply honoring the old covenant foundations that paved the way. Together, we explore how to live our lives today in the rhythm of Jesus Christ. Let's step out of the noise, press into His grace, and walk through the Word.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a genuinely intense, emotionally raw piece of social commentary. It's a dense critique that touches on everything from race and gender to media bias and the very limits of self-defense. And it's deeply rooted in historical resistance and theology. You'll even notice that powerful visual theme we're using today with the bold black and gold, those vibrant Pan-African accents, the raised fist, and the open Bible set against those gorgeous indigo crew and Timnej geometric patterns. It really sets the tone for the depth of this topic. Now, our goal here isn't to take sides. We're just here to unpack exactly how the author constructs this incredibly complex argument. Let's get right into it.
The author kicks things off with a simple but heavy statement. I am tired. Deeply, truly tired. It's such a striking way to start, right? From the jump, we're told this isn't just about some isolated local news story. No, it's framed as this exhausting, heavy reality that women, and specifically Black women, have to navigate every single day. It immediately sets the stage for a much bigger conversation. So, to wrap our heads around this, here's our roadmap. We're going to hit 6 key areas: the incident itself, claims of media manipulation, gender in public spaces, systemic racial double standards, biblical and historical justifications, and finally, the right to self-defense. Okay, part 1, the North Lauderdale incident, the parking lot altercation. So how did this all go down according to the author? Well, it escalated through a very specific sequence. A man got angry over a parking space. First, he uses his truck, and literally his physical size, to block the spot. Eventually he moves and the woman parks. But here is the absolute crucial detail the author hammers home. He left, but then he decided to come back. Despite being told to back off and leave her alone, the author argues that his sheer arrogance drove him to aggressively reapproach a woman who at that point had drawn a weapon to protect herself. There's actually a raw transcript snippet from a witness that really highlights just how chaotic this was. You can literally hear the panic in their voice. They say, now she can't get in her car. They sitting up there talking about maybe she call 911. The author uses this to show that this wasn't some calculated standoff. The woman was physically trapped around her car, scrambling to find safety from a rapidly escalating threat. Which brings us to Section 2, Claims of Media Manipulation, Framing the Narrative. Right after breaking down the incident, the author takes a hard pivot. They absolutely blast the mainstream media's coverage of the event. The claim here is that the media intentionally splices footage to craft a biased story. Like, they argue the media conveniently leaves out the parts where the woman is running around her car, actively trying to de-escalate the situation, and begging him to move. Instead, they use loaded words like taunting to twist her shock into aggression. And at the exact same time, they sanitize the man's aggressive behavior by playing up his background as a veteran and a retired nurse. Moving on to Section 3, Gender and Public Spaces. The burden of concession. You know those online comments saying the woman should have just gone into the store or driven away? Well, the author completely rejects that. They ask a really pointed question. Why is it that women always have to make concessions for men? It's a passionate argument that women shouldn't have to change their clothes, their routes, or just how they exist in public simply because some men can't keep their aggression in check. It really forces us to ask, who is actually responsible for de-escalating things? Let's look at Section 4, Systemic Racial Double Standards, a tale of two narratives. To expose the systemic bias in our everyday language, the author lays out some really stark comparisons. For instance, when a Black person takes something from a store, society immediately labels it stealing. It's a crime, plain and simple. But if a white woman does the exact same thing, suddenly she's a kleptomaniac. She gets a medicalized excuse instead of a criminal record. And we see this exact same pattern with addiction. The source argues that a Black woman battling substance abuse gets slapped with the label drug head. But a white woman dealing with the exact same addiction, she's met with sympathy. People say she's just stressed or a victim of poverty.
Now bring that logic back to the shooting. The author claims that if a white woman had been cornered and forced to defend herself against an aggressive man, the media would instantly crown her a hero. They'd recognize her vulnerability. But because this involves a black woman, the system defaults to painting her as violent and aggressive. So, the core takeaway here? The very act of survival is twisted into a crime based entirely on the race of the person trying to survive. Next up, Section 5, Biblical and Historical Justifications, Rooting the Argument. This is where the critique gets theological. The author argues that sin entered the world through a man, Adam. They then bring up the book of 2 Timothy chapter 3, which warns us about people who are unloving, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, and brutal. And the author makes this incredibly bold claim. Next to that biblical definition, there should literally be a picture of a man. They're arguing this points to a severe historical flaw in humanity, this toxic urge by some men to constantly exert authority and control over everyone around them. Then they connect that ancient biblical patience to modern history. You know, the Bible says not to be quick to anger, but as the author points out, it doesn't say you shouldn't be angry at all. It's been 161 years since Juneteenth, the end of slavery, and the author states, I think that is slow enough. Basically saying, marginalized people have waited way long enough, and their anger today, it is 100% justified. This brings us to our final section, the right to self-defense. Stand your ground. The author really goes on the offensive here against the media's portrayal of the deceased man as this sympathetic veteran. They want to know who he actually was. Like, why was his own daughter estranged from him for years? Was he toxic? Was there a history of domestic violence? Did he push his own family away with the exact same arrogance he showed in that parking lot? The author is furious that the mainstream media isn't asking these questions, claiming they're protecting his image while throwing the survivor under the bus. Ultimately, the author concludes that the man in that parking lot knew better, he should have walked away, and that the woman had an absolute right to stand her ground. But it leaves us with this huge, overarching question. How do race and gender dictate who is actually afforded the right to stand your ground? When self-defense is literally a legal protection, why does society demand that certain demographics prove their innocence while others get an immediate benefit of the doubt? It's a deeply provocative question about accountability, and honestly, it's one that this source material demands we stop and think about.
Thank you for walking through the Word with us today. To stay connected and continue the journey, be sure to visit our New Testament Believers on YouTube and follow our Facebook page. Until next time, God bless you.